What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and today's Tuesday, which means it's time to talk through my must-add waiver wire targets for Week 14 of the fantasy football season. All of these players are under 50% owned in ESPN leagues. We're going to talk about 15 to 20 players. Everything is up in the air. You might be in a win-and-you're-in situation where you need a spot start right now. You might have a buy locked up or you want to stash somebody long-term. We're going to cover players for all teams of shapes and all sizes across the board. As always, if you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe. Let's go.
VVS stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like I'm frozen.
Now, first up, just as we released our top 10 lessons learned video yesterday, we had some breaking news. We had an inclination that sure, McCaffrey would be out. But not only is McCaffrey on IR, but so is Jordan Mason. We got a tweet from Adam Schefter saying Christian McCaffrey is looking at a 6-week recovery. Jordan Mason suffered an ankle injury and is also on injured reserve. So what does that give us? That gives us Isaac Guerendo. I get killed. I don't know. There's so many A's in the Isaac that I sometimes say Isaac. Isaac Guerendo. Really fun prospect out of Louisville. One of the most monstrous size speed specimens. And it's not like you guys need to know that. It's really just, why are we adding this guy? And it's part of it, man. He played in a game I was going to say a few weeks ago, but like half the season ago. Looked really good. Breakaway run that he kind of slid for late. But he's a monster, man. 6 foot, 221 pounds, 4.3 speed, elite agility drills, 41.5-inch vertical. He is an absolute monster, and there's no one really else in this backfield. Now, I will say, keep an eye out. We haven't gotten any news yet. I have to assume that they add somebody off the street. I was gonna throw a name out there that they could sign, but we've already seen Kareem Hunt get signed. Maybe Leonard Fournette could get signed. There's really not a whole lot of players out there for them to grab. Maybe they poach somebody off a practice squad, because Elijah Mitchell's the other one who has been hurt the entire season. So Isaac Guerendo, it is fully his time to shine. Now, it sucks a little bit that this 49ers team is pretty much out of the playoffs. They're hurt everywhere, so it's not going to be the same, the RB1 for the 49ers, but it's still going to be a Shanahan system, and they're still going to score probably bottom half of the league in points, but that's still not absolutely terrible. In the only game this year where he played over 60% of the snaps, it came against Dallas here. You can see in his game log from Sleeper, he had 14 carries, 85 rushing yards, a touchdown, 4 targets, 3 catches. So what I'll say here is that if you need a running back, or if you want to block, maybe you're in a win-and-you're-in situation, your running backs are good, but the guy you're playing against, bunch of bye weeks here, maybe his RB1 is mixed in, he's scrambling for an RB, I give you full permission. Whatever is in the chamber, however much fab you have, all of it can go towards Isaac Guerendo. And that's the way we always structure these waiver wire videos at the top here. These are my priority ads, guys I would be using fab bids on. Isaac Guerendo, as much as possible, would be my recommendation. Now, next up, huge tier break, but still my priority ads. We have Jonathan Brooks. I was shocked to see that he's only rostered in 47.3% of ESPN leagues. And this is much more if you have a bye week locked up and you want somebody to stash here, because he's not going to come out here and give you something usable as soon as week 14. But as we can see by the usage, this is from a PFF chart that Nathan Yonke does. He had 14 total snaps, which isn't great, to 54 of Chuba Hubbard's, but he did look promising. Despite having, just 1 third down snap, no 2-minute drill snaps, he did have 3 catches, a couple of them on screens, a couple of them were kind of explosive plays where he made people miss. He looked good. They were scheming him up, schemed touches. He did get both of the snaps at the goal line as well, so they want him on the goal line. They want him in scheme situations, but he's still at just 21% of the snaps, up from 9% last week. So we could see this keep on climbing, and then maybe by the end of it, week 16, 17, he's out there in 50-50 split, and he's someone you can start down the stretch, which I think could be interesting. Now, some other players I would have as priority ads here would be Braylon Allen. Don't go crazy on him. We talked about this yesterday. Breece Hall is banged up. The Jets are in a spot where I could easily see them shutting him down. This is a report that was before the game. that Breece Hall is expected to play, but his status was very much in doubt. Hall suffered a pretty significant injury against the Colts, much more than the team let on. Initial thought was he'd miss a few weeks. I'm just saying, I'm not going to put anything out there, but it wouldn't shock me at all if he suffered a setback or something in this week of practice, and all of a sudden Breece Hall is on IR, which I hate to say. I know a lot of us have Breece Hall on our teams. This is very much a possibility. If Braylon Allen is out there, make sure you grab him. Now, what I will say is don't spend the entire thing, because whereas Isaac Guerendo, he's going to be out there handling all of the touches, this will be like a 60-40 split in favor of Braylon Allen, but they really like Isaiah Davis, who I like as well. They drafted out of South Dakota State, and you can see here, despite Breece Hall going from 85% of the snaps in week 11 to 61%, Braylon Allen only went from 24% in week 10, 17% in week 11 to 29%. So he didn't take all of the slack left behind by Breece Hall. A lot of it went to Isaiah Davis, who hadn't taken a snap since week 10. He was up to 18% of the snaps, taking 45% of the long down and distance snaps. So he's much more of the receiving back. I would expect this to be, I'm trying to think of kind of a more reasonable split of like the top running backs right now, but it'll probably be like 60-40. Braylon Allen, the main back, he'll have most of the touches. He'll have the goal line work, but 2-minute drill, passing down situations will go to Isaiah Davis. And we've talked about this before, but in terms of handcuff rankings, yes, if Bijan goes down, Tyler Algier is a league winner, but I think you also have to factor in the likelihood of the lead back going down. As of right now, Bijan Robinson is super healthy, looking good, super efficient, but Breece Hall is banged up. So I would probably rather have Braylon Allen at this point, just because I think the starter in front of him is more likely to go down. Now, let's talk about some of the Browns, right? From last night's game, you have Elijah Moore here, which I would have as a priority ad. If you're in need of a wide receiver, especially during the bye weeks here, I believe, I do just want to make sure the Browns don't have a bye, but I would assume that they don't. Regardless, though, Elijah Moore, he put up 14 targets last night, and it's just like, any game with Jameis Winston has this upside, even against an amazing, we got Winnie in the background being an absolute menace. Even with this defense, Vance Joseph, the Broncos, the Browns still made it a way to just absolutely go balls to the wall, have a bunch of passing yards here. They get Pittsburgh next week. Not an amazing matchup, but still, Elijah Moore's been a wide receiver 3 ever since Deshaun Watson tore his Achilles. And for that reason, I'm very much fine picking up Elijah Moore, putting him in the flex spot when you need to. Now, moving away from these priority ads and just talking about players to have on your roster, picking up after waivers run, or if you just want to do like a $1 bid, let's talk about some running backs here. First up, Jerome Ford. I was actually shocked, but he was used a lot in last night's game. Of course, Nick Chubb scores the touchdown, but you can see here from PFF's snap counts that they do with Nathan Yankee, Jerome Ford had 57 snaps to Nick Chubb's 29. Now, of course, that was game script. They were trailing this entire game, or most of the game, fighting back, sort of 2-minute drill up-tempo, and that's where Jerome Ford's going to come in. He ran 39 routes. He had 1 target, 9 carries. So 10 touches, that's not bad for a guy you can get off of waivers. He's not going to be a league winner. He's not going to be anything crazy. But any game that the Browns aren't favored in, he should be in the mix, especially when you get these chaotic games here. And when we look ahead to the lines from 4for4's tool, where they look at the future upcoming schedule, they are underdogs in each of their next 3 games, which does serve to where Jerome Ford is going to help you. After that, we have Kamani Vidal, our next running back here. Just as a speculative stash, he was out here as kind of the second RB behind Gus Edwards, but with J.K. Dobbins out, he's still somebody that needs to be rostered. Of course, when we look at the Fantasy Life utilization report, 52% of the snaps for Gus Edwards, 26% for Vidal, 13% for Hassan Haskins. If Hassan Haskins would just go away for good, like that's something that we're going to be monitoring heading into the next top 10 lessons learned. How long is it going to be until Hassan Haskins can go away for good? You had 7 opportunities for Gus Edwards, 4 for Vidal, and 1 opportunity for Hassan Haskins, and he fumbled. So we'll see how much of this can consolidate to a 2-man backfield. And regardless, Kamani Vidal, he's in the mix. It was a weird game as well where they didn't score a single offensive touchdown, so I wouldn't take too much away where, there's only, there were only 12 running back touches in this game. There will be more moving forward, especially because they almost lost that game as well. Then we have Zach Charbonnet, which is where we're just getting into handcuff territory, but Kenneth Walker did open the door here for Zach Charbonnet. I do want to double check as well. I feel like I did hear some rumblings that Kenneth Walker potentially has an injury, but I want to make sure that I'm not speaking out of turn here. Yeah, he did. He limped off a play during the game. Nothing else has really been reported. So we'll see. Something to monitor. I wouldn't really be all that panicked, but again, opening the door a little bit. You can see here from Ryan Heath, Kenneth Walker just had his 5th straight game above a 72% backfield carry share, which is good, but he also had his 5th consecutive game failing to reach 14 or more PPR points. Walker was stuffed inside the 5 twice. This led to the Seahawks going to Zach Charbonnet, giving their next 2 carries inside the 10, and he scored on one of them. So he's opening up the red zone work for Charbonnet. He was hobbled in this game. Charbonnet had 7 opportunities and a touchdown. There is a chance that they kind of make this more of an even split, and there's a chance that Kenneth Walker picked up an injury. So something to be aware of. Then we also have Cam Akers. And here, Aaron Jones just had a brutal game, as outlined by Ryan Heath as well. You can see Aaron Jones' backfield shares over the past 4 games, 50% in Week 10 with an injury, 60% in Week 11 with an injury, Week 12, 88%, super high up to the point where maybe you even dropped Cam Akers, 45.5%. He fumbled over his first 4 carries twice. So Cam Akers looms. Aaron Jones is somebody who's been banged up in the past. He's kind of been struggling where he's one of like the worst running backs inside of the 10-yard line. He's been fumbling, and there's just a chance that at some point Cam Akers gets called upon, and I think that he is a great stash as well. We'll talk about Ray Davis too, who had 11 carries, 63 yards, and a touchdown in the snow. He's still just a handcuff to James Cook, but these are guys that you just want to be stashing. Blake Corum, same deal. If Kyron goes down, unlike Braylon Allen, there is no third running back in the mix. If Kyron goes down, Blake Corum will be handling 80% plus of the snaps, the work, the touches, all of that. So that's somebody you want to be stashing. And then the last running back we'll talk about with the importance, right? Unlike the Chargers, is that this is now a 2-man backfield as shown by the Fantasy Life Utilization Report. You can see in Week 10, 67% for ETN, 23% for Tank Bigsby, 9% for Dearness Johnson. Week 11, Dearness Johnson's out there because there's no Tank Bigsby, but then in Week 13, there's no Dearness Johnson. It was just Tank Bigsby at 46% of the snaps, Travis Etienne at 52% of the snaps, and the biggest story here is 38% of the routes for Travis Etienne, 47% of the routes for Tank Bigsby. That's a huge development, right? You can see Week 10, he had just 22% of the routes to Travis Etienne's 37% of the routes. They're now trusting Tank Bigsby to run routes and get involved in the passing game. So there's some standalone upside, which is tough without Trevor Lawrence now, but there's also massive upside where if Etienne goes down, I'm not so sure that it'd be like Dearness Johnson handling all of the passing down work. It'd be Tank Bigsby handling like 70% of the work and being a must start every single week. So Tank Bigsby needs to be rostered as well. Now, let's move on to the wide receivers here. And first up, this is a crazy name that we're going to say, but Adam Thielen. Bryce Young is having this resurgence. He threw for like almost 300 yards this week. Another great game for Bryce Young. And Adam Thielen at this point is like his most trusted veteran receiver, where he played in a part-time role the week before, and then this week, 10 targets, 8 catches, 99 yards, and a touchdown. He is somebody that I'm not going crazy about, but is probably a fringe wide receiver 3 moving forward. And then I'll always mention Xavier Legette, who also had 8 targets in this game for 4 catches, 53 yards, with some late-season rookie upside, but it doesn't really seem like he's going to break that glass ceiling because Adam Thielen is just very trusted. Tommy Tremble has been in the mix as well. So is David Moore. It's just getting spread around a ton, and Bryce Young's just kind of playing like point guard of whoever's open. After that, we have, some more wide receivers. Again, I know everyone's sort of down bad potentially with bye weeks. Marquez Valdes-Scantling. This is another guy you just put in the flex and you hope and you pray. He's put up 25.9, 16.7, and 11.6 PPR points in his 3 games as a Saint. He has 4 touchdowns over those 3 games. You kind of just hope for a touchdown. Another guy in that same exact ballpark is going to be Nick Westbrook-Akine. You throw him in the lineup, you hope for a touchdown. And the funny part is that if you've done that over your last 8 weeks, he has scored a touchdown in 7 of those games. He has 7 touchdowns in his last 8. He is the wide receiver 13 since week 8. I don't know how he sustains this as somebody that's like not catching a lot of passes. He's making all of his money scoring touchdowns, but he does get the Jaguars this week, who are one of the worst defenses in the NFL, and he could probably score against them again. And I say again just because he scored last week. He scored 2 touchdowns last week. So I think I did my math wrong, where I think he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He has 8 touchdowns in his last 8 games. The stat I meant to say was that he's scored in 7 of his last 8, but he has 8 touchdowns over his last 8. I mean, there's just, I don't know. This year has been so weird. I want to say there's just no way, but at a certain point, if you're down bad, if you're desperate, if bye weeks have hit, you can definitely go with Nick Westbrook-Akine. And then I'll mention A.D. Mitchell. Now, he let us down in a big way. Just 60% of the routes last week, dropped both of his targets, but without Josh Downs, I do think that he's still somebody worth rostering for the late season stretch run. I'm not starting him anytime soon, but if he has a big game this next week, maybe works up to like 80% of the routes without Josh Downs, then we're really cooking. Then let's talk about tight ends here. First up, we have Will Dissly, who was a big disappointment this past week. He had 0 targets, but the Chargers offense, we talked about it with Vidal, they were just brutal. They scored 0 offensive touchdowns. Will Dissly did run 71% of the routes. Anything over 70% is what we're looking for, and when we get that from a waiver wire tight end, and this is, in a deep league where you can't just pick up Hunter Henry or Pat Freiermuth, any of those guys off of waivers, Will Dissly is your next best bet. 70% of the routes is great. He did have an injury in this game, or heading into this game, the groin injury, but I think he should be past that by next week against the Chiefs, who are allowing the 4th most fantasy points to tight ends. And if you want to get even deeper, right, Will Dissly is available in about like 70% of leagues. If you want to get even deeper, I would go Juwan Jennings. Taysom Hill out for the season, and in this game, even with a healthy Foster Moreau, he ran 79% of the routes according to Fantasy Life's utilization report. 79%, that'll play. Anything over 70% for these late round guys, really, really good. He had 7 targets, 5 catches, 36 yards in this previous game, and now he gets a bad Giants defense as his next opponent. He should be like a fine streamer rest of the year. And then we'll talk about our quarterback streamer of the week. I will say, if you have a like Russell Wilson on waivers, you can go towards him. There's some other guys that are maybe like 45% owned. You can definitely see it if they're available. But if not, the streamer of the week is Will Levis, who's actually been really good. Over the last 4 weeks since he's gotten his job back, he's been the QB 15 at 17.3 points per game. That's better than Russell Wilson and Drake May over that 4-week stretch. And now he gets the Jaguars at home in Tennessee, who are allowing the most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. So the perfect matchup for Will Levis. He has some Jameis Winston to him. It's going to be hectic. It's going to be crazy. But he can run for like 30 yards, maybe score a rushing touchdown, maybe 2 passing touchdowns. Like, everything's on the table. It's a divisional game. Will Levis, I think, if you're desperate and the QB selection on your waivers isn't that great, I think that he is a fine option given what we've seen over the last 4 weeks. Now, as always, that is going to do it for us today. All I ask is that if you enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you in the next one.
Stones, like this froze.